Well, let's return to our top story now. The government's launched an action plan to counter Chinese spying efforts after MI5 warned MPs were being targeted by Beijing. Let's bring in our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clarke. Professor, no surprise that there are Chinese spies here in the UK, but the government appears to be surprised by the extent to which they're trying to infiltrate Parliament and those in positions of authority.
Yeah, I mean, that's arisen recently, the issue about the parliamentary aides who, the case was brought against them and then dropped because it looked as if the government wasn't prepared to say that China was regarded as an enemy as such. And so we've got a couple of parliamentary workers who are recruiting people in Parliament. And there's nothing illegal at all about this. I mean, the government is trying to make people aware of the greyness of the line. I mean, all the time, people from embassies, councillors from embassies, talk to people in Parliament and people in think tanks and universities about, who's up and who's down, how do you think things are going with the government, who are the big players in this. That's just general information about the political arrangements in a country. At some point, some of those conversations get a bit more detailed. And very often in a think tank, for instance, the world I used to be in, it was, we can give you lots of access to material, but we'd like you to give us some access to material as well. And so it becomes more insidious when people start to get extra benefits for a bit of extra help. And very often these conversations are, when they become overt, they say, we don't want you to do anything illegal. We just want you to take some photographs of road junctions in your country. That's not illegal in your country. But, of course, once you do that, once you're doing something for them for a favour, as a favour, then you're going down that road. And what these characters are always working on is legitimate influence. And then every now and again, they find a vulnerability or a way in to create an illegitimate source. And if you do it with enough people over enough years, then eventually when a government comes into office or people reach the top of their profession, 2 or 3 of them are in some way penetrated by friends that they've got in other countries who've been working on them for a while.
I should say that the 2 ladies that we're showing here, Amanda Chiu and Shirley Shen, we have approached them both for comment. We haven't heard anything back from them yet.
It's interesting they've been named, though. Because I think it shows that the government are serious about this. They want to call out.
Quite confident, wouldn't they?
Yes, exactly. They wouldn't name them if they had any doubts, I think, because they must know the names will now go round, and so will their photographs. And so the government is obviously trying to call out this type of behaviour. Partly, I think, to warn the Chinese off a little bit. I'm not sure it will, but it at least warns them off. And it puts the establishment on notice that this is a constant campaign which China is conducting against us and has been doing for several years. The Russian campaigns against us are much more targeted. They know what they go for and they go after them. The Chinese just hoover up everything because their philosophy is very different. It's collect everything, analyse it later.
We've had a response from the Conservatives, from Alex Burkhardt, saying that Labour are burying their heads in the sand. He hopes the government's got the message about the real nature of this threat. The quote goes on, "The time for complacency is over. Now is the moment to take the threat seriously, including by vetoing the proposed mega embassy and putting China on the enhanced tier of the foreign influence registration scheme." Tell us a little bit about that. It was called FIRS in the comments.
Yeah,
Does
foreign
that make
influence.
Difference, putting
Foreign influence registration scheme. If your country is on that, then anyone who works for your government has to register so that they can do their legitimate job. They can be on a trade delegation, they can work for a company, whatever it might be. They can work in the embassy. Great. And having brought that in predominantly because of worries about Chinese influence, the government then wouldn't put them on it. And you can only assume it's because they're frightened of or nervous about Chinese retaliation. The Chinese always retaliate, and they've got lots of economic levers with most Western countries that they can retaliate with. And they also, because they run a command economy themselves, if they say to people, stop buying this sort of product, nobody buys it. Simple as that. They really hurt the Australian economy some years ago by boycotting, telling advising the population to boycott Australian goods and not to bother with Australian restaurants. Same with Japan. The Chinese can actually hurt you economically because of the way in which they're so intrinsic to the economies of the Western world, and they do. So if you take action against China, you've got to price in the retaliation that you can expect.